First, I'm going to ask you about some demographics. What is your current age?
My age is 20 years old.
What is your sex?
Male.
What is your sexual orientation?
Straight, which is heterosexual, I believe.
Yeah. What is your race?
Race, Mexican.
What is your current job?
I'm a student success coach at the San Jose Junior College Petaluma campus.
What is your current education status?
I am a full-time student.
Where do you currently live?
I live in Runner Park.
Who do you currently live with?
I live with my parents.
Where were you born?
Petaluma.
Where did you grow up for the first half of your life?
Petaluma.
How about the second half?
Runner Park.
Okay. What is your dad's highest education level?
Elementary.
What is his current occupation?
Agricultural field worker.
What is your mom's highest education level?
Elementary, and she is also an agricultural field worker.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask some questions about family culture and background.
Okay.
What types of jobs did your dad have when you were growing up?
Since I was born, he's been an agricultural field worker, so he's been doing that and landscaping and stuff like that for about 20 years. 20 plus years.
How did you view those jobs growing up?
View as in like what did I think of them, or
Yeah.
I mean, I thought they were harsh. Like the conditions in which they were working on in were different than like what I would see other people's parents doing sometimes. Mainly because I went to a predominantly like white school, so.
What was your dad's role in the household?
My dad's role. Let's see. I mean, your basic parent roles as a provider. He made sure that we had all the necessities we needed to in the house. If things went wrong in the house, he'd fix them. He'd take care of everything like that. So.
What were some things your dad would usually do around the house?
Around the house, I mean, he'd make sure that everything was clean, like outside the house, like all like the yard work, all that stuff. He would make sure all that would look nice, so he would do all that. He would. And he'd share the responsibilities with my mother. So I mean, if she was at home, he'd clean. If she wasn't home, he'd cook. So it was pretty equal.
How did you view those things that he did?
I mean, growing up, I viewed them as like normal in the sense of like that's what a couple does when they're married and they share those responsibilities, at least in a 2-parent household.
What was your mom's role in the household?
My mother, like I mentioned, she was also an agricultural field worker, or is. So they would both get home from work. My mother would cook usually, and yeah, she would cook. And then, like I said, depending on who was home, who was available, they would share the responsibilities as far as making sure the house is clean or cooking, and for me and my sister.
What were some things your mom would usually do around the house or with you guys?
My mom around the house usually is the one, the majority of the time, doing the like cleaning. She just tends to clean up after, whether it be me or my sister or my sister's kids. She usually just cleans.
How would you view that?
I'd view it as, I don't know. Never really thought about how to view it as. I think, it was more just the norm in the household almost, because like we were just so used to my mother doing that. Usually.
What were some values your parents taught you growing up?
Hard work, the main value, honesty, and yeah, just mainly those were the two main values that they would push to us, is hard work and honesty.
Who would mainly teach them to you?
Both my parents and both of my parents were the ones who taught that to both me and my sister. So it was my dad and my mom who taught us those values.
Can you remember of a value specifically that they taught you when you were growing up?
Aside from those two?
Yeah, like a specific example, maybe like a situation. Were they
As
taught
far
you?
as for hard work, I remember when so I started working with my father when he would take me to his weekend jobs, doing landscaping. So I mean that was where he was the one teaching me the value of what he called the dollar. So he would teach me basically hard work and how money is earned, and why not to take it for granted.
What were some values you think directly related to being a boy that you were taught?
To being a boy, I think this the one that I just mentioned. I think going to the job site with my father and making sure that he knew that I was, you know, becoming aware of what it was like to be a hard worker, especially as a male, and like the work load that they that my father did in the landscaping industry.
Can you give an example of something else maybe that you can remember relating to being a boy?
Um, I guess the protector. Um, when situations like because we lived in different neighborhoods and stuff like that, so when situations um, would pop off that were like scary or something like that, like my father usually was the one who would react first. Um, so I mean that was one of the things that I guess was also the one of the things that he taught was to be a protector.
Okay, now I'm gonna ask you some questions about you growing up.
Okay.
What were some games you would mainly play with your guy friends in school?
In school, my guy friends, games. I mean, we played kickball. Um, Kickball. What else did we play growing up? I mean, outside of school, with my other guy friends, with like my cousins, stuff like that, we play cops and robbers and stuff like that.
Why do you think you played this mainly with guys?
Mm, I would say it would have to do with like the idea that it was for boys only. You know, when you think about like kickball, for example, the majority of the time the guys were the ones that would say that like, or um, we were the more athletic ones and stuff like that. So I guess that's why like we would usually just tend to stick to guys playing it or boys.
Were there times in school that you would get divided into boy and girl groups?
Well, I mean, recess is a perfect example when we would play kickball and stuff like that. Mainly, it was just the guys, the boys, and then the girls would be playing like jump rope and stuff like that.
Why do you think that happened?
Mm, I mean, I think growing up, you don't want to. I mean, why the separation happened? I think probably just because growing up, you don't want to be like, as a boy growing up, you don't want to be called like a girl for playing, you know, with the girls, or a girl doesn't want to be labeled as like a tomboy or something like that for playing with the boys. So I think that ideology just has to go with why that happened.
Do you think that was fair?
Um, I mean, at the moment, I didn't know about it, so I don't think I thought anything of it. I thought it was just the norm. I mean, as a from a little bit a more educated perspective, I think, um, not that it's not fair, but I just think it has a lot to do with gender roles and how we perceive them.
Can you remember things that you would compete with other kids in?
Um, Compete. I mean, like at any point in life, or just like growing up.
Growing up.
Growing
Mainly.
up, mainly. Okay. Let me see. I mean, I remember a lot of times we would have the school races, so like we would like have to, whoever was the fastest one to run around the track usually. So that was like the competition that we would have. But other than that, I don't really remember anything regarding competing with people.
Who do you remember mainly competing with?
Competing with. I mean, I can give an example like when we had the West Side Relays, which is like the elementary schools would get together and they would have the competitions. Usually the sections were divided by gender, so like the boys like dash or sprints or whatever it is, and then the girls. So I mean, when we would in that sense we would always compete with people of the same like gender.
Okay. What were some things girls focused on in high school, in your opinion?
Girls focused on? Let me see. Let's see. What were some of the things that I thought girls focused on? I think, at least in high school, I mean, in my opinion, and it's not right or wrong, but I think attention, maybe, a little bit.
Why do you think they focused on attention?
I mean, I think, I mean, not specifically, I mean, yeah, in a way, attention, because I feel like a lot of the times when, like, there's, like, high school drama and stuff like that, it's to be viewed a specific way almost. So I think maybe it was just, like, for, like, credibility or, like, status in high school or something like that.
What were some things guys focused on in high school?
I mean, guys, I think the majority of the time were focused more about, like, the image and being, like, the cool dude and, like, making sure that, like, they seemed manly and stuff like that.
Why do you think they focused on that?
Popularity mainly.
Okay, now I'm gonna talk about the meaning of masculinity.
Okay.
What does being a man mean to you?
I mean, to me, being a man, I mean, there's so many things that come to mind when I think that question is, like, I mean, definitely, like, the values that I learned growing up is, like, hardworking, honest, I think respectful. Yeah, I mean, I mean those three things, and then I think other types of, like, categories fall within those three. To me, I believe. I can't really sum it up what it is to be a man, at least in my opinion. I just think there's so much that goes into it.
Like what?
I mean, if we're discussing, like, gender roles, I think we should, like, I think being a man is being respectful of a woman, and yeah, respecting women, listening to women, and valuing our women. I think is one of the main things, to being a man.
What do you think has influenced those meanings to you?
Let's see, what has influenced those meanings. I mean, like I said, the values that I grew up with, definitely have a huge part in influencing that. I think, having the opportunity to be a little bit more educated, but also surrounding myself with strong, independent women that, like, I've had the chance to work with, or live with and stuff like that. You know, like my mother, my close friends and stuff like that. So I think that definitely, or they definitely have a huge, part in why I'm so influenced to think that way.
What are some qualities that come to mind when you think of an alpha male?
Qualities of an alpha male. I mean, I think the most typical ones that you'd see normally are, like, the alpha male who has a lot of women, super muscular, and you know, toned and all that, nice car, and all that type of stuff. I mean that those are the general pictures or ideas that I usually associate when I think of, like, an alpha male.
What do you think those qualities represent?
I think they represent status and power.
Can you give an example of when you see this in real life?
I mean, like, the most frequent times the most times I guess I've seen it would probably be, like, the gym. Usually the big guys that, like, are super bulky and show up to the gym are usually the same ones with, like, the really nice cars, and then the same ones that, like, the girls tend to talk to at the gym and stuff like that. But other than that, I mean, I don't really see it much elsewhere. Usually just the gym.
What does masculinity mean to you?
Masculinity. Is that different from the other question that we got asked about masculinity?
So masculinity are basically qualities,
Okay.
that represent a man.
Okay. So which one is this one? This one's the one. What it?
So the one, what does being a man mean to you? This
Okay.
one's what is masculinity?
Okay, masculinity.
So just all general qualities and stuff. Like
Okay.
that.
Masculinity.
To you, not in general.
No,
to
yeah,
you.
yeah. To me, masculinity means, I guess, just being. For me, being like the term masculinity is like I have to be okay with myself as a human before I can think of myself as a masculine male, and like then from there the qualities that I possess are like, for example, like what, going back to what I said, like hardworking, honest and stuff like that. I think that's where I can start to look into those qualities and be like, okay, that's what makes me feel masculinity, but that might be different for somebody else. So I think masculinity is just, at least in my opinion, masculinity depends on who you are as a person rather than who you are as like a male or what gender you associate yourself with.
What are some masculine qualities you feel you have?
Masculine qualities that I feel that I have, I think one of the biggest ones, I mean, at least with the way, I mean, from my experience, I think, is being able to listen, to whether it be male, female, any gender. I think that's one of my biggest qualities, masculine qualities. Hardworking, my work ethic, my honesty. What else? And my respectfulness. I mean, like respect for me is earned. So as long as we're on a mutual respect level, I think that's important.
Why do you think those qualities represent masculinity?
I think they represent masculinity because it reflects on how you go out into society and interact with people. So I mean, I think it just goes like I said, it goes back to like who you are as a person also.
How do you show your masculinity to other men?
I mean, for me personally, I think just like what I never really see myself as competing with other people. But like I said, I like to be honest. So like, for example, I'll go back to the gym example. Like me and my friends will be working out or something, and they're a lot bigger than me, and they can do a lot more weights. And I mean, in the gym, that's a sign of masculinity. You know, the more weights you can do, the more manly you are in a sense. But for me, like the way I display my masculinity in a sense is just I'm honest with people in the front of what I can and can't do, or in like who I am. And like for the gym example, if I can't lift that much weights, I won't lift that much weights. You know, I'll be honest with people and be like, hey, I'm not the strongest, or hey, you know.
Why do you think you might show your masculinity to other men?
I guess going back to like that like status, like you want to live up or hold up to be a specific status. So I mean, and specifically with men, you want to be the alpha male in a sense sometimes. So I mean, I guess that's why people or men tend to kind of go back and forth between their masculinities and who has the higher masculinity or something like that, you know.
How do you show your masculinity to other women?
To other women? Let's see. My masculinity, I mean, I don't know, that's a tough one. I think, I mean, just going back to like where I was talking about, I think I show my masculinity through like communication and actions.
Okay, what does femininity mean to you?
Femininity? I think it just means, I guess it could, I mean, like going back to masculinity is like usually traits or qualities that are associated with being a male. So femininity would be, to me, traits or qualities that are associated with being a female.
What traits or qualities are those?
I mean, either gender can possess feminine qualities, which is not wrong. I mean, but I think typically when you think of feminine qualities, you think of, let's see, like the nails. You think of like, you know, nails, purses, really cute, small, cute purse dogs and stuff like that. I think it's typically like the ideology, and that's just coming from like a media influence based perspective. Um, but like to get into it deeper, I think it just depends on the person because each person has different traits.
Do you think you show any feminine qualities?
Yeah.
What are they?
I mean, I think for me, it'd probably be like hair, like making sure that my hair is usually up to, like with my haircuts, make sure I'm looking fresh. um, Chapstick, I always put on chapstick. But I mean, I don't know. It's an iffy line because I mean those are often associated with feminine qualities, but those are just good hygiene qualities in general too.
Okay. Do you think you avoid showing weakness or emotions to other men?
No,
Why?
I mean depending with the men in my life that I associate myself with, like my guy friends and stuff like that. I'm super open with like my emotions, with what it is that I feel and stuff like that. Um, so I don't think I have to hide who I am, and even with people I don't know, I don't typically tend to hide who I am. I'm really upfront with who I am, and like if I'm having an emotional day, whether it be good emotions, bad emotions, whatever. I usually tend you can if you know my personality, you can know that I'm not okay, and I usually be willing to talk about it and stuff like that. So I don't think I hide who I am, but that's just because of the people I associate with myself too.
Have you showed weakness or emotions to women?
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, I think it's okay to show vulnerability in some cases, because we're human and humans are emotional creatures. So I think, I don't think it's necessary to play up this role that I'm never gonna feel a certain type of way just because I am a male. I like I said, I like to be upfront. So if something's bothering me, if something's upsetting me, I show it.
Do you think for you it's different sharing things between men and women?
No, I think to me it's based off relationships. So depending on the relationship you have with that person, that rapport you have with that person, the way you open up, it differs from the way you would open up to somebody else.
Alright, now I'm going to ask you some questions about your future.
Okay.
What is your ideal career when you grow up?
I want to be an academic counselor.
Why?
I mean, I like working in a college setting. I was highly influenced by my college advisor, who was also one of the coordinators of one of the programs I joined. So I want to be able to help those students just because, I mean, when I was pursuing education, I didn't have a lot of help. And I'm a firm believer that it only takes one person to change that ideology, so I want to be that one person in somebody else's life.
What has influenced your choice?
Like I said, being influenced by my academic counselor here at the JC. He was a huge influence in that. But also going out into the community and doing a lot of like volunteer work and doing a lot of work with high school students and middle school students, and kind of seeing how similar certain struggles are, and just being able to relate to them.
All right. What are some jobs you think mainly men have in our society?
In our society, mainly, I mean, a lot of times, the hard labor, field work, and stuff like that, labor intensive.
Why do you think that happens?
I mean, depending in the community. I mean, it depends in the community, but sometimes education level. A lot of times, men don't pursue higher education as much as women do, I believe. So I mean, that could be one of the reasons why. And then also, I mean, the amount of labor that goes into certain field work and stuff like that.
Do you think men are the main ones who apply for these jobs?
Yeah.
Why do you think that?
Like I said, labor intensive. I mean, depending on the education, and I mean, a lot of times it's based off, I mean, survival. I mean, if you look, specifically Sonoma County is pretty expensive to live out here. So, I mean, if they're the ones who are providing the majority of the income for the household, they typically tend to go into a specific trade or a field with not the best pay but with the most hours.
What are some jobs you think mainly women have in our society?
I think going off of like what I've seen, a lot of women dominate like education based jobs, whether that be teachers, whether that be counselors, anything like that. I think they tend to dominate a lot in that specific genre or that specific field. So I think education.
Why do you think that happens?
Probably because they might have a little bit more. I mean, compared to men, they probably pursue education a lot more than men typically tend to.
Do you think women are the ones who mainly apply for these jobs?
Yeah.
Why?
I think a lot of times, like going back to education, they're the more qualified ones.
All right. What is your ideal family setup when you have a family?
When I have a family, wow. Never thought about that. My ideal family setup would be like how many kids and stuff like that.
Do you want kids?
Oh, okay, let's see. I'd probably would want to live with my significant other, and have kids around the time I'm about 30, between 30 to 40. 2 kids would be probably my ideal family. 2 kids and my significant other, and it'd be a 2-parent household with both providing income.
Who do you think would take care of the kids more?
I mean, in my ideal family, I think it would be a shared responsibility. At least I hope it would be.
Who would work more?
Like I said, I would hope to have both parents. I mean, both of us providing income and working.
Why do you think that, for both taking care and working?
Because I mean, the way I grew up too. I mean, both my parents worked, and I mean, shared responsibilities is better than having responsibilities lay heavily on one person as opposed to the other. So I think if the responsibility is shared and we're both providing income, then I think it would work out better.
So, is your goal to be the main income earner for your family?
Not necessarily. I mean, I wouldn't be upset if my significant other earned more than me, as long as it's something that I like to do.
Do you think your income, you guys' income, will reflect who takes care of the kids more? If you were to make more money, would you expect your spouse maybe to take care of the kids more, or vice versa?
I think it would depend, because I mean, depending on like the income, whether it's if we were working the same hours, and I mean it was just due to different pay, then I still think that responsibilities would be shared. If either one of us was working less hours, then I think that's where like it would depend, who was making more income, and we could be like, hey, I mean, it's not convenient for us to lose quality time with children, for if one of us can provide a little bit more to the household.
Can you give an example of how you want the costs to be divided in your home?
Costs. I mean, ideally, it would probably be like specifics, like which, if it was me or my significant other, like you want specifics.
Like, how do you think the bills would be taken care of? Grocery shopping would be taken care of. Rent would be taken care of.
Yeah, like I mean, because I mean, ideally it'd just be half and half, but I don't want to say it just half and half. Like, do you want like examples, right? Like, I would pay for this, and that, and she would.
Or how do you think the the money would be divided. So, give for the example, like how I said earlier, if you were to make more money, would you pay more of the bills? Do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think so.
So, would you say the cost will be divided depending on your income?
Yeah, I think so.
How do you think work around the house would be divided?
I would go back to, I mean, I would think whoever has not so much more who spends more time in the house, but I think whoever, depending on like who gets home first one day or something like that. I mean, like I said, shared responsibilities, but I mean it's not always like that. So I mean, just depending if if one of us were to get home first, I would assume that one of like whoever gets home first would try to take care of at least something before the other person gets home, and vice versa.
What are some contributions you're going to want from your partner?
Contributions,
Yeah, to
as far as
the household, helping you out with kids or stuff like that.
let's see. I mean,
To the relationship, anything like that.
ideally, contributions would be probably, I don't know. I think contribution wise, I think it would be nice to have my significant other be being open to like, let's see, contributions. I don't know.
What are some things you think your partner will help you with, or you want them to help you with in your family?
Kids. I think mainly kids. I mean, although I've had like experience with like kids, like with my nieces and stuff like that, and nephews, I think a woman's nurture would be highly needed and valued a little bit more than the males. But that would be probably the only thing.
Can you think of anything that has influenced your outlook on your future, or your goals, or your future relationship?
Anything that has influenced it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot. Like, I think growing up in a 2-parent household as opposed to growing up in a 1-parent household, I think that's one thing. I think education, media probably has a role in it, and the generation in which I'm part of also.
Is there anything recently that has influenced your outlook on your future or your goals?
No, I mean, no.
So overall, is there anything you want to add, like something big that you think stands out that influenced you or has shaped you on your outlooks on your future?
Not that I can think of.
Thank you.